go.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to do something today. Hi, Atlanta. I'm going to do something today that Dr. Jacobson and Dr. Wagner might not approve of, which is, ready for a pop quiz? How many of you think that the average media consumption of a 10-year-old is less than 5 hours a day? By show of hands. Nobody? Less than 5. More than 5? Most people. All right, the number is 7.5, and for low-income kids, it's actually more like 9. This is all the different media experiences that children have. Okay, question 2. There will be a test. Question 2. What is the average age of the first digital game experience that a youngster has? Just call it out. 2. Okay, I heard 2, 4, 8, 1. 18 months. Well, I mean, there are many experiences of early onset gaming at 18 months, but really the average is 4 years old at this point. It was 7 6 years ago. And what do you guys think is the average age at which a child now either has purchase of a mobile phone or has access to a mobile phone? Call it out. 8, 12, 6. Whoa. 18 months. It's actually 10. It's actually 10. So you can see the topic of my conversation is the digital deluge. I mean, really what's happening out there. And let me just start. So I want to tell a tale. This is the old frontier. One part distinctly American, the other an increasingly global story that I think is affecting every learner I know, from tots to teens to grandparents, from Maine to Maui. Today I'm going to explore what I'm calling the new frontier that's changing most families' lives. I know it's changed mine. I have 3 kids. It's a modernization of communications and play that technology advocates claim, they claim a lot of things, can help children fly to new places. This new frontier is in truth a lot more complicated for the people who matter most in kids' lives, and many of you are either one of these or both, parents and educators. So I work at an R&D center named for Sesame Street's founder. Many of you don't know who that is, but her name is Joan Ganz Cooney, and she's a genius and somebody who should get more credit. The center examines the potential of digital media in both formal and informal learning environments. We do research, build learning prototypes for at-risk kids, try to influence policy agendas when we can, and generally have a whole lot of fun looking at which media innovations might have the biggest impact on young children. That's the first cast of Sesame Street in 1969. We do have a theory to build on. In our work, we take what we call an ecological perspective, by which I mean, in this very complicated graph, we try to take into account all of the environmental factors that may, and in fact do, shape a child's interactions with media. Well, as Bob Dylan sang, the times they're changing. Due to the technology revolution, globalization, evolving demographics, the family's been transformed in the past 3 decades. It looks a lot different than when I was growing up. And more recently, it's been changing in ways that have real consequences for the healthy development of children. Here are some major trends, some of which Dr. Wagner pointed out, that we are observing in the US and around the globe. Millions of families are stressed out. The global economic downturn means that more families are making do with less, of course. Parents paid hourly wages must work overtime to make ends meet. The sad fact is that parents are spending fewer waking hours with their kids. And this phenomenon, by the way, is not just concentrated among low-income families. Even parents who are better off are stressed out by work and other factors that shape the quality of the time they're spending with their children. Children these days tend to spend time in many different places: childcare, at a neighbor's house, after-school centers. Many, in fact, split their weeks between 2 parents or with extended families. And many are being raised by grandparents. It's a little-known fact. In the United States, over 2 million elders have primary child-rearing responsibilities. The average age of a grandparent in America is, who wants to guess it? 47 years old. Finally, there's a deluge of media, an overload, often resulting in overstimulation and too little sleep. Some educators and physicians are rightly concerned that the ubiquity of screen time media has created an epidemic of media multitasking. The result, perhaps, a result in deeper learning time and more diverted attention. The data in this slide on media consumption from the Kaiser Family Foundation are in fact alarming. School-age kids' media exposure, as I noted at the outset, is up over 2 hours on average in the past 5 years. Kids are, believe it or not, and I guess most of you do believe it, are spending more time with media than they are at school. When do they sleep? And these trends, of course, have real-life consequences. Although we've not yet established the cause, it's clear that heavy media users do more poorly at school, perhaps because, as Tony pointed out, school is not nearly as engaging as it needs to be, are less happy, and are more bored with their educational choices. They also get into more trouble. And increasingly, as I mentioned, young children are mimicking their older siblings and peers. According to Common Sense Media, the average 4-year-old will end up consuming about 3 hours of media today. Well, let's not get totally depressed. In spite of these worrisome trends, technology offers what I think are fresh new learning paradigms supported by connectivity, mobility, and the practice of participation. Kids today have these new opportunities through their social media, their social networks, the transmedia, anytime, anywhere learning, through their own participation than ever before to build the skills that they need to compete and cooperate in a global age. In fact, it's beginning to feel a little bit like the Wild West. All of us here today realize there actually is untapped potential that digital media can fulfill for learning. Here in the United States, our vision is trained always on a new frontier, what was once called, right, manifest destiny, for better or for worse. It's still very much part of the American character, the American dream, an engine for creativity. In the 1960s, JFK had this dream about upward towards space. He promised to put the first man on the moon. This mindset, I think, still drives the current explosion of innovation in interactive media. But the digital learning landscape, most of which is less than a decade old, for crying out loud, there was no iPad 3 years ago, remains largely uncharted. And until it's better explored, understood, and tamed, parents and teachers, I think, aren't confident enough, and right now, they're not letting their children take full advantage. For now, many of us are keeping our children close to the homestead, so to speak. Parents and teachers are, frankly speaking, ambivalent. Our work and personal lives have been transformed. The internet, mobile phones, e-readers, social networking, these have all improved communication, entertainment, learning for adults. But why is it that parents, when given the choice, those who own e-readers, for example, won't allow their preschool children to use them? The phenomenon of, that's all over major news outlets in the States and around the world. So at the Cooney Center, we decided to try to take a look at the transition from print to digital reading. We did a survey of 900 e-reader owning parents. We released it last year, and fully 4 in 10 prohibit their young children from reading ebooks. Even more said that they just aren't impressed with the offerings that are available. We see similar ambivalence among teachers. In a recent survey commissioned by the Public Broadcasting Service, researchers found strong belief among teachers that technology benefits their teaching, and we're doing a lot more of this work right now. But another survey of teachers found that they blame video games and texting as a key cause for students' lack of focus and lesson skills. This ambivalence toward technology from both parents and teachers may explain why there's such a moat between what children experience at school and what they experience at home. To succeed in the future, we can't keep pointing fingers. To get on the right path, I think young children have to urgently explore. That's what developmentally appropriate practice is. Just as the explorers Lewis and Clark did for settlers in the US, to extend my frontiersman analogy, we are, with lots of help from groups like the New America Foundation, have begun to map the digital media learning landscape for parents, teachers, and savvy early educators. So in a new report issued last winter, which we're going to update next spring, we decided to take a close look at perhaps the wildest territories of all, the apps marketplace. To make an understatement, those of you who download apps know that it is booming, it is impenetrable, it is crazy. Look at this growth in apps just since 2008. 2008 is when the iTunes store opened. It's 5 years later, almost 5 years later. The most recent numbers show there are now about 800,000 active apps available to buy or install. Games and education are the top two categories in several mobile marketplaces. In the education category, children are the largest target. In fact, almost 3/4 target preschoolers or primary grades kids. Unfortunately, though, the marketplace is not matching the needs of the kids. Most of the apps are drill and kill. They're missing critical learning needs. Few focus on vocabulary comprehension or the storytelling skills that can build strong literacy capabilities for a lifetime. To promote such capability, the center is doing research on intergenerational play, the powerful learning together moments when children develop both emotional strength and active critical pathways and connections to build their brains. We're tracking what the renderings in this slide represent, the potential of joint engagement through media. Like Lewis and Clark, I know it's enough already, right? Some educators and media creators have a vision of this new frontier. Here, Sesame Workshop is offering new scouts. Hope they come up, including Elmo and Cookie Monster. We're not focused on understanding every new gadget or game or app to hit the scene. That, of course, would be impossible. Rather, new pioneers are designing a new map, one in which there's no disconnect between home, school, and the other places children spend time. We can design a continuous experience, as John Dewey would say, that will enable deeper learning. The key gatekeepers in children's lives must join forces so that kids move seamlessly across settings. Perhaps we should call it this generation's manifest destiny, or as Henry Jenkins calls it, Transmedia Exploration. Whatever it's called, to realize a new vision in the digital Wild West, we need to enlist the cooperation of educators, developers, parents, policymakers, all of the critical sectors. Here are 5 steps that could help us do some serious homesteading in the next 5 years. First, I think it's essential that we connect parents and teachers who've largely been left out of the public policy discussions to bridge the gap across the moat. We can make progress by, first, sharing real-time data every day on how kids are doing, providing richer guidance on what constitutes media quality choices, and by better deploying the free, taxpayer-supported educational media made by organizations like mine and PBS. Second, we need educators and policymakers to lead a public discussion about the untapped potential of educational media and new tech. We shouldn't shrink from the public health concerns about overconsumption and inappropriate content, but we really need to reframe the conversation around modernization, lifelong learning. Every other sector is deploying technology to expand productivity and to incent creativity, so we need new public support so that we can break out of this time warp. Third, we need to figure out how to draw from the exhilarating experimentation going on around the world. So we've got a meat trees hole in the wall that's teaching primary school children about technology in rural India. The Club Tech Centers here in Atlanta, developed by the Boys and Girls Clubs. And all sorts of other digital learning centers that are sprouting up across the goal are great exemplars for us to scale. Fourth, we need to invest in teachers' own mastery of the new digital tools, because teachers cannot teach what they do not know. The Cooney Center is working with leaders in the government and in the nonprofit sector to establish a digital teacher corps comprised of literacy teachers, librarians, tech-savvy specialists who are privy to the most sophisticated uses of games, mobile, and social media. Together, they can help address the daunting reading crisis that tragically saps millions of young children's potential in the US and around the globe. And finally, we're in a backwards pattern on research and development. On the development side, our children are living in a tech environment that represents a future age, a Star Wars or a cartoon conjuring images of the Jetsons. On the research side, our knowledge resembles that, unfortunately, of the wagon train frontiersmen. We simply don't have enough usable information to make key decisions about what works best for whom and in what conditions. We need to invest more in careful longitudinal studies, but we also need to partner with educators on quicker studies that will allow you all to play an essential role in designing the right inquiries and the right products. So this is one 21st century guide to help parents and educators, the people who still, I believe, matter most to young children, make the difficult but necessary transition from the digital Wild West to a new frontier, one that will deliver on technology's enormous but as yet untapped potential. We need to start right now. And make no mistake, the first step is to organize a modern-day army, one that will definitely need to be a whole lot more diverse and more friendly than this motley crew. We need tech and relationship-savvy parents, dynamic educators, bold community leaders, and at-risk and risk-taking business leaders to realize a new vision for a shared future, one where every young child can engage with a world that is more exciting and wider than ever before. Thank you so much for listening.